How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
You guys keep up the good work, man. Podcasts are the way of the future.
Here we are kicking off another podcast recording. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Quick question, cuz. I seen some scrapes on your knees, bro. You trying to move up in the world? I know the radio business can be cutthroat, but come on, man.
On the shins, not the knees.
Oh, okay.
I've got no hair on my knees, by the way, so you might think that I'm doing something on my knees, but no. I told you the story before. I was trying to do some plyometrics. I hate cardio, so I just do the jump training. I was at the gym. They have an adjustable plank, and I was trying to jump on it, and I was going for my third round of doing this. I usually do 8 to 10 rounds. I was round 3, and I don't know if I caught my toes on the way up or I just missed it on the way down, and I scraped the shit out of my shins. I've got massive holes in my legs. The bones hurt. This is now 2 days later, and the bones still hurt to walk on. Dude, and the worst part was there was like 15 people standing around doing different exercises. So everybody heard me miss, then my big-ass body fall into this thing, and then I almost busted my face. Mind you, I just got my grill fixed. Remember how I was missing teeth from playing hockey? So I just got my grill fixed. I almost busted my teeth on this thing. So it was a total mess. My wife was there. She was like stretching in like one of the corners, and she heard me fall, and then she like seen me laying on my back, and she like looked up and she would like mouthed to me. She's like, "What the fuck? Are you okay?" And I just like stood up and I shook my head like, "God damn it!" And like it hurt so bad. I tried to go back to doing it, but dude, my legs hurt so bad, like so bad, like the bones. Like, have you ever banged your shin so hard where like from the knee down it just like numb? No. It was like that. It's been like that for 2 days, man. Like I probably have like a small fracture or something. I have no idea. The damn things hurt so bad, though.
Similarly to the Lions, we could put you on IR for the rest of the year, huh?
You could put me on IR. Me and Carry on. Oh, boy. You know what, though? I'm happy about that. I'm not sure about you. So if you guys haven't heard, Kerryon Johnson has been moved to the IR. I think that's a good move. I think it's a very, very, very good move. His injury, I'm still not 100% sure what it was. I'm not sure if he dislocated his kneecap or if it was just a bad bone bruise on his knee. I still have no clue what happened to Kerryon Johnson on that play back when he was playing against Carolina. No idea. But I'm excited they moved him to IR. Look, you're out of the playoffs. There's no chance for you to do anything this year. Anybody who's banged up and anybody who's hurt, including Matthew Stafford, I believe and I feel should be moved to the IR. At this point, what you're doing is you're looking at what you have as far as depth. What can these guys give you? What do you have here to build upon for next year? So I'm rolling out all my second stringers. I'm rolling out the guys who I'm looking at that are going to be here next year, so I know what they have in the tank and what we've got to work with. Guys who aren't going to be here, you're going to sit. You're going to sit. Maybe I'll play you a quarter, but for the most part, you're going to sit. There's no reason for you to go out there. There's no reason for Matt Stafford to go out there the next 2 games. Why? He's got a bum back, right? He's hurt. Why are you going to roll him out there? So he can get feasted on by Everson Griffin? Come on. Why? Why would you do that? So Anthony Barr can take his head off? Why? What's the purpose? You're not winning anything. Yeah, I know he gives you the best chance to win this weekend, but what's it matter? All you're going to do is you're going to shoot yourself in the foot and hurt your draft position. I think when we look back on this season, we're going to look back to this Arizona game, and we're going to be like, this was the worst win ever. The worst win ever. Because right now, Detroit could have the 2nd overall draft pick. Number 2.
Wow.
Right now, we're in 7th. And it's all because of that Arizona Cardinal game. We're going to look back on that game, and we're going to be like, the hell did we do? Why did we win? There was no point to win this game. And I know you can't tell players to tank. I get it. You can't be like, hey man, you play a gladiator sport. I'm going to need you to go at 50%. You can't do it because those guys are going to get hurt. But what you can do, guy like Kerryon Johnson. Sorry, Kerryon, your season's over. Guy like Matt Stafford. Oh, you got a bum back? Your season's over. You can roll guys out there and be like, look, we're playing all the second stringers because we have to know what we have here. And I know you don't want to lose a locker room, and you can lose a locker room that way, but you can set it up to where you protect yourself by IRing guys, sitting guys out because they are banged up or nicked up. I mean, this Detroit Lions team is so banged up. Deshaun Hand's now IR'd. It's insane how many guys they have injured already this season.
Because do you know what feeling I have sitting here today about to talk about the Detroit Lions on this podcast? The one word is jealous. Okay, you look at the Chicago Bears, and you saw them last year and what they were able to accomplish. Everybody, when you looked at that organization, was like, Mitch Trubisky? You guys did what to get Mitch Trubisky? You unloaded what? Mitchell Trubisky? And then, they get a new coach, and boom, they won the division. They made an impactful move, similar to the Lions, but they made the impactful move. They bring in Khalil Mack, and they said, look, we're going for it, And you look at the Detroit Lions, and they go out and they get, the defensive coordinator of the New England Patriots, and you kind of expect that maybe he could have did things faster, all right? You got the Indianapolis Colts, who take one of our guys. They get Frank Reich from the Eagles. They pinch him. They bring him over to the organization. There was rumors, there was talk, if you recall, that maybe it was going to be Josh McDaniels, but he might not have been interested. And they go out and they get Frank Reich. And boom, look what they're doing. They're the talk of the league. They've won, games. They played well. And so I sit here and I'm just jealous that other teams can turn it around faster. And you just look at the Detroit Lions, and we're talking rebuild. We have to have people, program directors that message us, and they're starting to take a look at Bob Quinn's draft, and they go, you know what? You picked up Jared Davis when you could have had Watt. You could have had more impactful player. You could have had Kamara. You could have had two different type of teams going on right now had you made a better move and better, decisions at certain times. And yes, Bob Quinn has made some moves that have been impactful. But here's the thing. It basically is even. When you make such awful moves that you've made in the draft, Tease Tabor, Jared Davis, and you see what was out there, now you have to go out there and catch up and bring in a guy like Snacks to try and build your team back up. And so you sit here, you're jealous, you're upset, you're frustrated. And again, the thing that people are talking about is, when is it going to happen? Mm-hmm. We suffer together. I've told everybody, I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and be like, I'm jumping off, I'm going to choose the Steelers or the Browns. No, I'm going to talk about the Lions. I'm going to be pissed off at the Lions because that's the team. That's the team that reps Detroit as I look at this Orange D in our office. But I sit here and I go, how much hope do I have? Really, in the end, this season ejected late November. It feels like the season was only 12 games. And, a season is made up of 16 games. But realistically, as this season progressed in 2018, you look at it and you go, this season was a waste. And how many years does a new head coach get? Because next year, if the Lions start off all cockeyed with a weak schedule, there's a chance Patricia doesn't even last 2 years. I mean, I would not be surprised if the heat gets so hot that Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia, and Stafford all roll out together and get whacked all together.
I think they're all attached at the hip, all of them, Stafford, Quinn, and Patricia.
All the talk nationally, locally, is just about how embarrassing this organization is. And it just sucks. And I'm just jealous that you look across the league and other organizations are able to turn it around faster and just make basic moves to do it.
Well, you've always wanted a consistent organization. This organization is consistently bad, not very good. So I get it. I know right where you're at, man. I understand. They are attached at the hip, though. Those three, the way their contracts are set up, the way everything is set up for this team going forward, the three of them are attached at the hip. So if one falls, the other two will follow. So just remember that. But I get where you're at.
And here's the part,
frustrating.
Yeah, here's the part that doesn't make sense to me, okay? This notion of the Lions offense, which arguably you and I will sit here, we can, have drinks, take our shots, and just be like, God damn, that offense is god-awful.
It's horrible.
Right? This talk that we would have about the offense started a year ago, 2 years ago. We were like tweeting nonstop. You can go back and look at Detroit Podcast, what we were tweeting. I was like, dude, this offense is horrible. Mm-hmm. Boring, check down. Why is this happening? And then we all thought maybe potentially that Stafford just couldn't, read defenses and he would just have happy feet. But no, now as this year progressed, And as Matt Patricia addresses the media and the questions, this was the plan. This was the fucking plan to go out there and throw the ball 5 yards when it's 3rd and 9. How is that possible? Okay, because I sit here, regular guy, loves to talk sports, loves hanging out with you on Wednesdays, before the show, during the show, after the show. And I'm like, I could tell you that fucking plan's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. You want to go with ball control. You want to be the defensive guru, and you've done a good job. But you look at that offense week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and you tell me that's the best strategy to come up with is to be conservative? You're losing. You're under 500. And it would kind of lend most people to believe that a basic, head coach would look at that and realize, you know what? Fuck it. I think we probably would lose being conservative on 3rd and 9. Let's just throw it 4 yards. Let's just fucking go for it. You know what? If you get shut out, fine, so be it. But at least you're airing it out. At least on 3rd and 9, you're not handing the ball off for 2 yards. At least you don't embarrass, Jim Bob Cooter, where he's got to come out and say, I don't want to call this shit. That can't be the game plan. How is that possible that a first-year head coach comes in here, looks at that offense for the first 5 weeks, and says, you know what? Let's keep it going. What the fuck?
No, you're right, man. And your outrage is well placed. It took until game number 3, game number 4, for this coaching staff to figure out that they actually have a running back in Kerryon Johnson. I don't know how you go through the preseason, you go through OTAs, you go through everything. There was a reason that you drafted him where you drafted him, and you moved up to get this guy. Yet you don't want to give him the rock. It takes a quarter of the season for you to figure out what you have there. Then he gets hurt, so now you've got to IR him. He hasn't played in, 5 weeks now? So what are we doing there? Matt Stafford's your quarterback. We talk about it all the time. The one thing Matt Stafford brings to the table, he can make all the throws. He can launch the ball down the field. If you get him in rhythm and you get him going, he's a much better quarterback. Yet you want to sit there and have huddles. You want to call plays in and slow everything down. You want to play a slower templed game. Why? This is a guy who, when he's feeling it, he's best in his hurry up. He's a guy who is best at throwing the ball down the field, taking shots. Yet, like you said, everything they want to do is dink and dunk. You want to throw everything underneath the coverage. You've got 2 guys on this roster that they're the exact same player. One might be better than the other, but Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay are the same exact guy. They are the same exact guy. They're the same guy that you bring to a team and you say, hey, go take the top off the defense. Why not split both of them out wide? Why not spread everything out a little bit? When you spread things out, it's much harder for guys to cover. It opens gaps up in the coverage underneath. So you send those guys, just have them run down the field, have them run deep. It's all you got to do. It stretches everything out. So if that pass isn't there, and look, guys, I'm no offensive coordinator. You're not an offensive coordinator. I'm just telling you what I see, and I'm telling you how I see this playing out. Have them run down the field, stretches the field, wide open now. So if that pass isn't there, either to the right or to the left, you have a guy who's running out of the slot, I don't know, Golden Tate, or in this case, TJ Jones, or I don't know, go Billingsley. Anybody, go grab a guy and have him in your slot. It opens up creases and gaps in the slot for him to run. And if that's not there, you have now stretched the defense. That opens up that dump pass for a guy like Kerryon Johnson, who, up until he got hurt, was the best at making defenders miss. He was the best at taking a hit and then gaining yards and falling forward. Look, guys, I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not Matt Patricia. That's your head coach. Your head coach is a rocket scientist. I'm a guy who spent 9 years in college. All right. It took me forever to get a degree. Finally figured out what I wanted to do. And it turned out I didn't want to do that at all. I didn't want to be a journalist. I didn't want to write. I don't like writing. I like talking to you. I like talking at you, Doc. That's what I like to do. I like to communicate with my mouth. Ask the ladies. $1 million mouthpiece. It's what I bring to this relationship. All right. I've got a $4 penis.
I fucked your wife, I fucked your daughter, and I fucked your son.
Wow. I didn't do that. But I like how you have that. How do you have that ready? Anyways, back on track. I like to talk. I don't want to write. All right. It took me forever to figure this stuff out. I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm not a football coach. But I know some things. I see some things. You guys see some things. I don't understand why Matt Patricia can't figure it out. I have no clue. Why can't Jim Bob Cooter figure it out? If I have to hear Jim Bob Cooter tell me about how This is what has been presented to him. This is what he has to work with. Look, I get it. And I understand you're pushing that blame off onto Matt Patricia, and I understand you're pushing that blame off onto Bob Quinn. I totally get it. And that's fair. That is fair. But when you call a draw play on 3rd and 19 every single week, you're not helping this team. You have to take a shot. You have to get the sticks. Take a freaking shot. Put the guys in a spot to win. And you're not doing that. And now we're at a point in the season where winning hurts you. Winning hurts you. At what point in the season do you sit there and you turn at your players and you're like, look, guys, winning's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt this organization. So we can't win. How do you sell that? You can't sell that. All you can do is IR guys and bench guys. It's stupid.
The part that frustrates so many people is that the analogy is the Lions and their head coach and the staff and management, there's a notion that they act like the smartest guys in the room. Like they believe that this ball control conservative offense is what's best for your defense. When you look at it, it's like
arrogance.
Yeah, and we all look at it and go, okay, fine. The fans want them to air it out all the time, and you want to be conservative. There's a happy medium that's better than what you're doing. That's all we're saying is that you can have an offense that scores maybe 24 points and can still, control the ball and move the sticks and things like that. The part that's frustrating is, what did we ask for when Matt Patricia was brought here? Put in a system, put in something that can be recreated over and over so that if you have an injury, because what's going on right now is the team has to be absolutely perfect, absolutely injury-free so that Stafford can have any sort of success. What should have happened was JBC should have been able to instill a system that no matter who was brought here, whether it be Stafford, Rudock, Castle, anybody that comes in the future can come right in and run the offense. Whereas what we're seeing now is, hey, if you eject your slot receiver, boom, the offense crashes. What we're seeing is that the belief is not a system. It's like, Matt Patricia's come here and surveyed the landscape and said, you know what, these guys can't do it, so we're going to run the most basic offense that doesn't work, that doesn't get first downs, and we're going to rely heavily on the defense. When you could have empowered JBC to put together an offensive scheme and say, look, show me what you got. Tell me why I should keep you here. And what's going to happen now if JBC's fired? You think that's going to instill confidence and joy in Matthew Stafford? He's going to be bummed out. He's going to be disappointed. And like I said last week, now more and more people are catching up to what I said and said, maybe, JBC might not be fired. We're all assuming he's going to be fired. Yeah. There's a chance that Stafford has a talk and says, look, get me this, get me that, keep JBC, we're good to go. And even if they do decide to move on from JBC, it's evident that Matt Patricia, as a defensive wizard, doesn't want to have this run and gun offense that's going to score super fast, so that puts his defense in a little bit more of a challenge. There are going to be times when...
why the hell did you run them all offseason?
Exactly.
You ran them basically into the ground.
I'm definitely resigned to the fact that next year there's probably going to be a 4th and 2 on the 50 that the Lions punt it.
Do you?
I can't handle that in this day and age. 50% of the time, the numbers tell you, if you just look at the numbers, that there's an advantage to going for it on 4th down. And this year, when you got nothing to play for, fucking go for it.
Yeah.
Every time, even if you're at like a 35.
Try new things out.
Who the hell cares? Yeah. Let's see if, your tight end can catch the ball. But no, in the end, you just resign the fact to punt.
Being in a brand new relationship with some freaky girl. She's like, hey, I want you to put this on. You're like, I don't really know about that. Just try it. It's cool, bro.
Exactly.
Just try it. Let me give you some information here, all right? I just pulled up the total offensive stats, all right? And we're going to run through this in reverse order. At 32, Arizona. 31, Buffalo. 30, the New York Jets. You know what all three of those teams have in common? They all have rookie quarterbacks, okay? Yeah. So 29 is Miami. Brock Osweiler was your quarterback for a majority of this season, all right? Your quarterback has been injured most of the year in Miami. Washington is next at 28. Washington just lost their quarterback, and he might not ever be able to walk again because he had an infection in his leg after he had a spiral fracture. And there's a whole lot of things going on with Alex Smith right now. Tennessee is next. And Tennessee is weird. I'm not really sure why Marcus Mariota has underperformed this season. I know he's been dealing with an elbow injury for parts of the year, but that offense has been surprisingly bad as far as the pass game goes. The run game, Derrick Henry has come out of nowhere. If you have Derrick Henry in fantasy football, at this point, you have to start him. If you're in a championship game, you almost have to start this guy. I know you don't believe in him, and I know you don't trust him, but geez Louise, you've seen what he has done the last 2 weeks. It's been ridiculous. Where has this Derrick Henry been? I don't know. After that, it's Jacksonville. Who's Jacksonville's quarterback? That's right, it doesn't matter who's Jacksonville's quarterback because it isn't Blake Bortles. That's the guy they drafted, and they said, we're done with this guy. We're done with him. They've got some scrub playing as their quarterback right now. After that, it's Cincinnati. What happened to Cincinnati? Andy Dalton has been sitting on the bench because he busted his thumb. Busted his thumb like 6 weeks ago. Andy Dalton is going to miss half a season because he busted his thumb. They've been playing with a backup. And then it's Detroit. Then it's Detroit at 24. You have your franchise quarterback. You have your guy. It's Matt Stafford. You had a running back. You did. You had one. Took you forever to figure out how to use him. And then the season kind of rolled along, and he dealt with a leg injury. And then you were like, I don't know. Do we want to start him? Do we not play? I don't know what we're going to do. So we'll just IR him now. It's insane the way this offense has performed. It's despicable. It's disgusting. The one thing you can say about this Detroit Lions team, the trade for Snacks Harrison was genius. It was outstanding. You traded for a guy who totally made over your defense on the fly in the middle of the season, and you only traded away a 5th-round pick. So you got to give Bob Quinn credit there. You can burn these guys to the ground when they screw up, but you have to turn around, you have to be fair and give them credit when they make a great move. The move for Snacks Harrison was incredible because that run defense was horrible all season long, and they really haven't been able to get out of their own way as far as standings go because they were so bad early on. But as of recently, they've been much, much better. And Snacks Harrison is going to make a huge impact going forward, not just next year, but the year after that. That was a great move. You gave up a 5th-round pick for a guy who you might be able to even turn around and sign again, might be able to extend him out and keep him here. For some reason, he's not in the Pro Bowl. I don't understand it. Doesn't make any sense to me. But that move was great because what you did was you just helped solidify the middle of that defensive line. You now have to add some ends. You have to build up, so you have to add some ends. And you have to build up the secondary because Darius Slay, I don't know if he's reached the pinnacle and now he's on the way down. I'm not sure if it's just a bad year. I'm not sure if he's just dealing with injuries and he's just slowing down a little bit because of those injuries. But Darius Slay has had a really, really bad season this year. And you need somebody else to go opposite of him. If he's going to be slightly above mediocre, that's what he was this year, come at me, you need somebody else to help him out. You need somebody else to alleviate some of that coverage. I know he had a big touchdown against Arizona, which really hurt this team. You need somebody else to go alongside of him.
So now the season's done. Obviously, the Lions were officially eliminated from the postseason with the loss to the Buffalo Bills. Quite expected. I mean, most people thought that, you know what, going on the road, the Lions probably were going to struggle, and the season now is over. Expectations, you can put away all your potential scenarios and things like that. We kidded around with it. People talked about it as just a way to keep a little bit of hope. Like I said, going into it, it was only 5% that you really had a chance anyway going into the situation. But now the season's done. We can now fully look into the draft and you start to ruminate and think about what's next. Obviously, when the season's done, people are going to be excited and definitely tuning into what Bob Quinn has to say, what Matt Patricia has to say regarding what is the future plan for the Detroit Lions going forward. And now you sent me this mock draft from CBS. It's from Ryan Wilson, and it assumes that the Lions are going to draft 7th, and they address
that's where they're at right now.
Yes, and they address the defense. What were your thoughts about the potential of the Detroit Lions drafting a linebacker from LSU? First mock draft we're going to talk about in late 2018 from DocNJock, Devin White, linebacker from LSU. How would you feel in that scenario if they do address the defense, but at the linebacker position?
He's an athletic player. He fits a need. This team does need to help bolster their linebacking core. It's not a guy that would be at the top of my list, especially right there. Not when there's a guy like Greedy Williams out there. He's a cornerback from LSU. I just mentioned you need another cornerback to go opposite Darius Slay, right? That secondary looks abysmal right now. I think we all agree the ends of this defense are what need the most help, especially since I don't think either one of us think Ziggy Ansah's coming back. He just isn't. You really don't have anybody after him. So if I'm drafting at 7, Greedy Williams is a guy who I would target. He's a guy who I would go out and pick up in this position just because you compare him opposite Darius Slay. You hope Darius Slay bounces back next year. I think all of a sudden your cornerbacks look much, much better which then makes your defensive line look much, much better because they've got time. They've got time to get to the quarterback because nobody's open downfield when somebody's trying to pass. The thing that I found really, really interesting, and stop me if I'm wrong here, but Detroit falling to 7 because of that Arizona win. In this mock draft, if Detroit was at number 2, Nick Bosa would be available. Now, the Raiders would have the first overall pick, and I think we both believe they'd take Nick Bosa at that point. But in this case, number 2 is Nick Bosa. Could you imagine if you're at number 2 and you have your choice of Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, who is not just an edge rusher, he's also a linebacker. The guy can do a ton of things, gets to the quarterback, and has the ability to disengage from offensive linemen to sit there and sack a quarterback. Or Clelin Ferrell, who's a defensive end from Clemson, who has played out of his mind his last 3 seasons. Those are the 3 guys. Those are the 3 guys that I want above anybody else, because all of those guys fill a major hole and fill what you need. And you shot yourself in the foot by winning against Arizona, which frustrates me, which really makes me upset, because these guys right here, you could draft and you're going to plug them in and they're going to start day 1 and they're going to get to the quarterback. That's all these guys do is get to the quarterback. I mean, Josh Allen has, I think, 14.5 sacks. Clelin Ferrell has 10.5. And Josh Allen does all kinds of stuff. We all know that Nick Bosa ended up taking off the season because he got hurt. He had core muscle surgery. But Nick Bosa is supposed to be like a generational talent here. He comes from a long line of Bosas. You see what his brother's doing in San Diego or in L.A. for the Chargers. So, absolute stud. And you had a shot at any one of those guys. Any one of those guys. You mean to tell me you sit down across from 1 or 3 of these guys and not one of them is going to knock your socks off during the interview process? I find that hard to believe. You look at their tapes are going to speak volumes for them. You would, any day of the week, you'd grab one of these guys and plug them in. And according to this mock draft, they're not going to be there for you if you're drafting at 7. You could have been drafting at 2, and you could have had your choice probably between Josh Allen and Clelin Ferrell. And now you don't get that. I don't mind the pick of Devin White as a linebacker. I would go Greedy Williams myself. Question for you. Depending on where the Lions fall and depending on what happens, we'll say day 2, right? Round 2, would you take a guy like Chase Winovich, or would you add a guy like Felton Davis, or would you add a guy like Devin Bush if Devin Bush is still there?
Yeah.
Out of those 3 guys, who would you add to this defense and who makes a bigger impact?
Based upon how players sometimes, takes a little bit of time to adjust to a defense. I think Felton Davis right away in this offense with Stafford, if you can get an offensive coordinator that can come in here with a dam and utilize him correctly.
So you're going to add a wide receiver in the 2nd round?
I could do that because of the fact that you're going to have to address some of the offense too and replace some of the players that are going to be let go. Obviously, I think in the slot is the spot that most people are talking about. And the thought that I had was, obviously, when you look at the track record, one of the spots that I think is going to be a need is defensive end. So if the Lions end up 6th, 7th, 8th, and there's a spot there that somebody wants, maybe one of these teams needs a quarterback and tries to move up. Maybe at the 22 spot, 21, maybe you can get a situation in which somebody wants to trade up and you try and get maybe Montez Sweat, who has the ability to sack the quarterback, and you try and successively add picks while moving down and start to use a strategy that can help, bolster the talent. But I would say the biggest needs for the Lions are going to be on defense and then probably, slot receiver. But everything else on that offense, I just think that, unfortunately, when you're building a team... I mean,
we've discussed TJ Lang.
2 players.
I think both of us agree TJ Lang will be retiring at the end of this year. I don't know how you bring back Ricky Wagner. It hasn't worked. I think you have enough there with was it Terrell Crosby? I think he can fill in fine. You then have to could Joe Dow slide over and instead of playing fullback, play guard for you? I don't know. Maybe at some point you're going to have to add another piece to that offensive line, which sucks because this offensive line has been in constant build mode and rebuild mode now ever since Bob Quinn's gotten here. It's crazy,
you
right?
Make the case if Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia are watching the film and they realize, okay, the fans are turning on Stafford. You sit there and you stay at 7 and you take Herbert from Oregon and you make him the guy. You develop him for a year and then you go, you know what? picks 2 through 7. You got a couple more extra in there in the mix, and you say, we'll find the diamonds in the rough. We'll get the guys, but we'll secure the next guy in waiting with the first round pick.
That would be
That'd be apeshit crazy.
Ballsy boss-ass move. Because
in this mock draft, he slotted to go with the next pick to the Giants.
At 8. You would send a message straight to Matthew Stafford, like, you're not good enough. You're not getting the job done. And I think Stafford would feel pressure like he's never felt before. That would be crazy.
But he's the best guy to do it because, when people argue it, they say, well, this year's class of quarterbacks isn't the time to do that. And I kind of could agree with it. But at the same time, and you realize, you know what? You got to decide what can happen.
What if Haskins falls into the second or third round? Would you take him in the second or third round?
I earlier on said no, but I do think that a quarterback must be developed. Is he the guy that I think could replace Stafford? He just doesn't picture, he doesn't picture it for me.
No.
But I think that many people are starting to turn in that direction and are going to be happy with that.
I think he's going to be a great quarterback.
You think so, huh?
Level. Yeah,
at the NFL level?
I think he's going to be very, very good at the next level. He's a pocket passer. He's not. That's what was so weird about this offense that Ohio State tried to run this year, is because you have a guy whose primary strengths are throwing the ball from the pocket. Yet your offense is built around read option and running.
If you don't do it, if you don't do it in the draft, there's a quarterback in San Fran that's kind of making some noise, beating some teams, and has some poise.
Nick Mullins?
Yeah, I think he could be a solid backup. Maybe while you wait for that quarter.
Solid backup. But you're looking at a guy to replace Matt Stafford. You think Nick Mullins could replace Matt Stafford in a year?
If you had a system in place, that might be, because the question that I would ask is if the offense is going to be conservative, he could do the job. I mean, it's similar to what has been going on over there in San Francisco. But I think he's better than what you got.
Well, yeah, Matt Castle's freaking a flaming pile of poop.
So I think you and I both realize that an upgrade has to take place at the quarterback position
at some point. I just don't know if it's now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Depending on how this draft falls.
The consensus is probably not Herbert, but it's time to start looking in that direction.
I'll tell you this much. If Haskins is there in the second round,
do it.
I'd take him. I'd take him all day. I would take him all day. With the scenario I laid out for you, I would have no problem. I think the safe bet would be Devin Bush.
Okay.
I think that'd be the safe bet. It's a guy who can play linebacker. It's also a guy who can play up on the line and I think could get to the quarterback. But I wouldn't have a problem with Chase Winovich. I'm not taking a wide receiver in the second round. I'm just not doing it. I agree with you. They need to add some wide receiving help, but I think the offensive line takes precedence over your wide receiving help, because if your $27 million quarterback can't make a wide receiver, we've got bigger issues. On top of that, you've got a guy in Ellington who you basically brought in off the streets, just woke him up one day off his couch, was like, hey, dude, we need to go catch some balls. And he was like, oh, all right, cool. Let me grab my jockstrap real quick. All right, cool.
By
Do
chance,
that, and we'll meet you in the streets.
By chance, is it true that you don't have a hamstring? No. Bring him on. No problem. Sign the deal, baby.
No problem. I mean, he's a guy who, look, just out of necessity, has filled in, I think, well enough.
Right.
He's a guy who you could probably put at your slot, and if you have a healthy Marvin Jones, you have a healthy Kenny Galladay, I think he looks a little bit better. His touches would be totally limited. He's not going to have 10-catch games. He's not going to have 15 target games. It just isn't going to happen. It'll probably be something closer to 3 or 4 catches and maybe 7 targets. But I think he could fill in fine as your slot receiver if you need one.
Now, the biggest indictment, and we'll wrap with this, is that Matt Patricia was brought here to quote-unquote change the culture. Epic failure.
Yeah,
he hasn't done that.
Remember, 9-7 wasn't good enough.
He hasn't changed the culture. He's
worse than Jim Caldwell. Let that sink in.
He fits into the culture where he thinks he's smarter than everybody, and he makes mistakes, not aggressive, has made a lot of significant coaching mistakes that I think people are going to harken back to and realize, wow, this guy's not, a head coach ready. This guy is a guy learning on the job. This guy is still making kind of rookie mistakes, and it's unfortunate because this fan base is starving for success. And when we're talking about mock drafts in the middle of December, it's quite embarrassing.
It's sad, right?
Exactly.
It's frustrating.
And when you take a franchise quarterback that has a gunslinging arm and you neuter him and you roll with that and you continue to week after week have 3rd and 9 and throw the ball for 2 yards and you approve that and you have a quarterback that's willing to actually call that play and run it, that just goes to show you the culture is not changed. And until we see signs, the criticisms will continue. The national media will still harp on the Detroit Lions, and it's just going to be more of the same. and people will be more and more deciding to pick other teams or just not watch as feverishly, and you'll have columnists saying, spare the kids, don't invest, things like that. But here at the Detroit Sports Podcast, we'll always be here talking about the Lions. We'll be watching. You'll be covering them this Sunday versus Minnesota. Whatever happens, I mean, it's not going to be something. I'm going to be shopping, to be honest, quite frankly. I'm going to DVR it like I always do. I'm not going to watch it live. I'll be tweeting a little bit here and there, but it's just a situation in which now I'm looking more toward the future and what this culture looks like because of the fact that this season has been abysmal.
We're about to get into some recruiting discussions because today is National Signing Day, and we're gonna discuss Michigan here in a second. What does this say about Michigan State? Michigan State just lost out to Rutgers, a running back,
that
K'Ron Adams.
I know people will
Rutgers
flip
over
out.
MSU.
The caveat is he's got a relative on the team. He's got a relative that plays at Rutgers. So for that, I don't care. It's not a. It's, you know what? Look, when I learned earlier today, and I text you, I was like, man, we sat here 4 years ago.
We did. We watched
and
it.
we had the TV on, and Brad Galley, Ric Flair, all up in there with the bright lights, and you had the comedians, the Sklar brothers, and it was signing with the stars. And all of a sudden, Brad Galley comes out there and announces Michigan landed the #1 recruit in all the country, Rashawn Gary. What did that do for you, baby? Jack shit. So all this is fun.
I want to discuss that. Let's carry that over into the next segment.
We'll tease that. What did it mean
I want to discuss
for Rashawn Gary being the #1 player overall, and now he out. He started his own company. He's like, bowl game? Shit, I ain't doing that shit. I'm making some money. I need to start a company. And we'll talk about that right after this. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. And cuz, let me tell you more about the Motor City Pawnbrokers. They're the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of short-term cash or are looking for quality brand name new and pre-owned merchandise. They got 4 locations in the Metro Detroit area, in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. They're a great sponsor of the network. Go check out and support those who support our project. Check out the MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. So, cuz, in 2018, how much do you pay attention to recruiting and signing in college football? Because you and I I think, have gone a little bit back and forth. We peek into it. We want to know how our favorite teams that we support handle their business, who they're going out there to pick up. Obviously, you brought up before the break, Michigan State losing out on some talent to Rutgers, which is not a good look. But for me, it's gone back and forth, whereas before I was all into it. I was like, oh, how many stars does this guy get? Why is Michigan State not getting these great players? But then all of a sudden, Michigan State's taking all these 3-star guys and going to the playoff. And then Michigan's getting guys that are ranked like #1. All the papers like star, 5-star, 4-star. This guy's great. This guy's flipped from Michigan. And yet, 4 years later, we sit here in this project at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I think we've had more success than the Michigan football team has had. And I look at it and I go, then who the hell gives a fuck about stars? Rashawn Gary was the #1 player in all the land. And it just goes to show you, and I agree, yes, it's worthwhile to peek into. Yes, read the articles, read Brandon Justice, read the work we're doing, read Steve Dace. But taper it down a little bit, just because I see what Brandon does, and every single recruit that signs with Michigan is like, he tweets out and is like, I heard from a source that this guy's going to change the offense. And I'm in there a little bit kind of going, oh, remember Rashawn Gary's #1 overall? He did jack shit. So I understand the hype train. I understand why those that do it, they rile people up. But that's also some of the reason why the fans are pissed off, is because you expect, hey, we got the #1 class. We got, we're doing great in the Big Ten. Yet when the season starts, these guys are doing shit. They can't even get on the field. They're leaving. They decide, they go, oh shit, I'm #2 on the depth chart? Motherfucker, I'm going to South Alabama. I'll go be #1 on the depth chart. Shit, there's a bowl game to be played? Shit, I'm out. It's one of those things where when you look at recruiting, peek into it, be in the know, pay attention. It's fine. But stop with all the bullshit hype, calling Daxton Hill the next Charles Woodson. That's a cockamamie bunch of bullshit, and nobody believes it. Because nowadays, I think the hype train is there, but now there's realistic people like me going, wait a minute, you got the best running backs out there in the world, yet you guys run the ball 50 times and get your ass kicked by Ohio State. So, tell me a little more about your wide receivers. Are you going to actually throw to them? The wide receiver that you draft, he's got 4.2 speed. He's the number one guy. This guy's going to be scoring touchdowns. Are you going to actually throw the ball to the guy? Are you going to have a coach that's actually going to realize his potential? And so that's why the number one thing I'll say regarding recruiting is calm down, relax. The number of stars is great for information regarding how much talent is perceived there. But in the end, you never know how much heart a person has. You never know what kind of scheme is going to be implemented year to year. And you never know how somebody's going to react to maybe Jim Harbaugh walking up to a film room going, dude, you dropped the motherfucking ball. Pick up the pace. This is Michigan here. He's like, oh, damn. Jim Harbaugh was nice to me drinking milk. Now in the film room, he's cussing me up a storm in front of my boys? Hell no, I'm leaving. You never know what kind of shit happens. So wait until you see what these guys are doing on the field. Relax. Not everybody that signs with Michigan's a baller. Not everybody that signs with Michigan State is a retread. It's just a situation in which you got to go recruit by recruit and see how collectively they fit into their ball club. And that's the way I've done it, and that's why I feel great. I don't feel like Michigan State is all that behind, Michigan. It's because of the fact that Michigan State has a scheme. They have their belief in what they want. Now, would I like to have seen Daxton Hill gone to state? Sure, that'd be great. But, day in, day out, you got some quarterbacks going from Michigan to Georgia, from Georgia to Michigan State, from Central Michigan to Michigan State. It's just a fun game to kind of peek into because these kids, they change their minds. They're 17-year-old kids. Like, I really, I'm going to live and die by what a 17-year-old does because they're thinking about, damn, how can I reach out to Doc and get my name out there? How can I make the next hype video so that Doc can retweet it? They're doing fun stuff. They're doing bits and shit like that. And there are literally some guys, and I probably would do that too. The next go around, I'm going to ask to be a highly recruited athlete, is they kind of float out shit like, I think, maybe a little picture with a Wolverine, maybe a little picture with a, Crimson Tide, maybe a little picture of a FCC logo, Big Ten logo to fuck with the fans. And they're all like, oh my God, John Macker's coming to Michigan. Then all of a sudden get my hat ready and just go, bam, going to Alabama, bitches, and just totally shock the world. These guys sometimes fuck with the fans because they know there's a bunch of fat ass motherfuckers that just sit there and read this shit all day long and are living and dying by it. So look, recruiting's fine again, but calm down, relax. Michigan just needs to find a way to beat some rivals and get some positive hype in the direction, actually get some fucking results. Typing in and tweeting people that we're looking for dudes that are loyal to Michigan and that we're an academic and football powerhouse is something that's detrimental to the program.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
Yes. So, in my opinion, ease up on the recruiting. Come on, man.
Yeah, for me, recruiting it's nice to peek at. It's fun to watch. I don't buy into it a whole lot because exactly like you said, how many years did you have to watch Mark D'Antonio go out there and grab 2- and 3-star guys? I mean, what was Le'Veon Bell? Was Le'Veon Bell a 2- or 3-star guy? I know he wasn't highly recruited. Michigan State was like his only big offer. And he goes to Michigan State and he becomes a very good player. And the next thing you know, he goes to the NFL and he's like arguably the number 1 overall running back in the league. So I'm not really into the whole recruiting thing. It doesn't do it for me because I've watched so many 4- and 5-star guys come through the door at Michigan and they just don't pan out. And the next thing you know, they're leaving a season or two later. It's all about getting a talent, putting that talent into your system and hoping what he does best fits what you're trying to do. That's what it really comes down to. That's what Mark D'Antonio has been able to nail time in and time out. And do it again and again and again. That's why I don't buy into the whole hype train with recruiting. As far as Rashawn Gary goes, and I want to talk about this whole thing with Rashawn Gary.
Before we do that, though, why are those guys that are into it so much into it? Is it because of the fact that maybe some spots,
small wieners?
No, some spots in the SEC, like Georgia, Alabama, there's not really much else to look into.
Generally down there, you're banging your sister. So it's banging your sister or it's
following. Yeah, who's going to Alabama?
Yes, that's it. So
I see that, but here in Michigan, there's so much. Why do you care so much? Why do people care?
Because they have small wieners. That's what it comes down to. No, I don't know, man. Some people get off by this stuff. I'm not sure why. Hey, look, how many times has Michigan beat Michigan State in recruiting? Like 99 out of 100, right? So you can't beat them on the field. Beat them in recruiting, I guess, right? How many times has Michigan beat Ohio State in recent years, right? Right now, Michigan, I think, has the 9th overall class. Ohio State is the 10th. So you can't beat them on the field, beat them in recruiting. It doesn't mean anything. It means absolutely nothing. But it's cool to talk about, I guess. I don't know. I'm like, me nor you are big recruiting guys. It's what it is. Maybe we can ask Brandon or Steve, because are they huge recruiting guys?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We can get them on and talk one day.
I don't think they have little wieners, but I mean, maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe in the coming weeks. Obviously, we're close with Brandon Justice, Steve Dace. We'll talk about it.
Love those guys.
Yeah, but just
Love those guys.
not to the degree that some fans
I'm just not into recruiting all that much. It's just like your high school. You remember what you were like in high school? I mean, I'm still kind of a douche, and I'm not in high school anymore. I was a total douche in high school. It was weird. It really was. It was weird. But I don't know. Back to Rashawn Gary, though. So 4 years ago, I was sitting right here in this seat. You were sitting right there in that seat. And on the TV screen over there in that corner, we had the signing with the stars.
The lights.
The cameras. We watched all of it.
The action.
And Rashawn Gary was the big piece. He was the big piece of that recruiting class. Fast forward 4 years.
Nothing.
I think, well, you didn't win anything. You're right. But I think Rashawn Gary was and is a very good player for Michigan. I don't know if he ever fully lived up to the hype that was, I'm the number one guy. I'm the best defensive lineman in this class.
Another example of what hype can do, because some people will say Rashawn Gary was decent, but never lived up to the quote-unquote hype that comes along with being a 5-star number one overall recruit. So calm down. That way you put a little bit less pressure on these guys so that, you know what, if Daxton Hill has 2 interceptions for touchdowns and others have like 6, you don't automatically call him a bust and he decides to leave on you.
Yeah. I think sometimes you have to check yourself. Do I think a guy like Rashawn Gary would have maybe been a little bit more productive in, say, a Clemson defense or maybe an Alabama defense? Yeah, probably. Do I think Rashawn Gary's a good player? Yes. Do I think he's going to have a solid career in the NFL? Yeah, I think he will be. I think he'll be a pretty good player. But again, it's how you fit the scheme and what the coaches are trying to do with you and what your responsibilities are. You know, so I think he's a good player. I don't think he ever fully lived up to the hype of being the number one overall defensive lineman, the number one. I don't know if he was number one. He might have been a top 3 or top 5 player that year, but I don't think he ever lived up to that. But again, was that his fault or was that what the coaches asked him to do? I think some of it. I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's some give and take there. Touching on what you said, because I find this really, really funny that Jim Harbaugh comes out and he just sometimes says stuff and it just makes me scratch my head. And I did have a little bit of a different outlook on this going into today. This was before Daxton Hill flipped and decided to come back to Michigan. Remember, Daxton Hill was the guy who verbally committed to Michigan and then a few weeks ago was like, I don't know, I think maybe I'm going to go to Alabama. And then today he was like, oh, hey, guess what? I'm going to Michigan. And Jim Harbaugh was talking about fireworks and different things going off today. And this was the firework, right? This was I think he's the number 7 overall player in all of the country. He's a 5-star recruit. He is the number 1 safety, number 1 defensive back in this crop of recruits. So Harbaugh comes out and says, the things I like best, guys that really want to be at Michigan and appreciate what Michigan has to offer, both as a football powerhouse and an academic powerhouse. So let's address the academic powerhouse first. Michigan's a very, very good school. I don't think anybody can argue that.
Yeah, I don't think nobody that watches sports really cares about Michigan's
I don't think
academic
so. I don't think
prowess.
so either. But what he said is not false. It's not a false statement. My wife went to Michigan. She graduated from Michigan. She's a very successful nurse practitioner dealing in a trauma unit in South Bend, Indiana. She's in freaking Notre Dame country all day, every day. Michigan's a great school. Absolutely great school. I wish I could have went there. It's an absolutely excellent academic university. All right. On to the elephant in the room, the football powerhouse. And me and you went back and forth a little bit on this just through text message, just talking. What have you won? What have you done? Yeah, it's cool that you sign all these top recruits and you go out and you grab all these guys, but what have you done? You've not won anything. You haven't beaten Ohio State. You've not won a Big Ten championship. You've not got yourself to the playoffs with some outside looking in maneuver like Ohio State did a few years ago. You've done nothing. You've had 3 and 4th place finishes.
What is wrong?
Finishes. I don't know what that was, but you've done really nothing.
What's wrong? Iron Sheik wants to know. What's wrong with Michigan?
At Michigan. Look, I like the fact that you were able to flip Daxton Hill. I think that speaks volumes. And we were talking pre-show, maybe why. And yeah, it's probably playing time because you go to Alabama, you've got to fight. You've got to fight for your right to play. It's not given to you. And I'm not saying that it's going to be given to him at Michigan. I think the depth chart at Michigan for him to come in and make an immediate impact is much less arduous than what's going on in Alabama. I think that's the main reason why he chose Michigan. I think that is the number one reason why he chose Michigan. I don't believe that there is some academic course at Michigan that Alabama doesn't offer. And he's like, I want to go to Michigan because one day I want to be a really good bookkeeper. No. That's not the case. This guy is going to either Michigan or he's going to Alabama because he sees his future at the next level.
Okay, and now as a guy that you could agree upon is a decent marketer and somebody that does, know how to rile people up, I understand why he does it, okay? But you look at it in the name of marketing, in the name of hype, I understand that Jim Harbaugh took a big, massive hit by losing in that manner to Ohio State, okay? But what's happened is the first couple of years, it was all good. Everybody was loving on Jim Harbaugh. People were definitely on board. They were very happy, excited. But then all of a sudden, things started happening where all of a sudden people started leaving Michigan and recruits are deciding to skip bowl games captains in this year. And you realize that a lot of the talk skewed negative. Okay, and so Michigan definitely has this perception that they're the leaders and best. There's this big hype train, and Jim Harbaugh is the leader of that hype train. And so he decided that, we've taken a lot of hits negatively in the media, so I'm not going to talk to the media. I'm going to start going through social media channels and put some stuff out there that will kind of galvanize some of the hardcore fans, okay? But at some point, and I think he got away with it years 1, 2, 3, and now 4. What's happened is eventually, obviously those at Michigan State are going to say, hey, what's been going on? What are the results? But eventually, even your own fans are going to be like, dude, you just got punked by Ohio State. Stop with the nonsense that we don't even want to hear the hype. Eventually, people stop, people are going to stop wanting to be fed a bunch of bullshit. And so that's what happens. And I think that eventually people will ask you, like, if I came out year in and year out and was like, I got the best podcast, I got this, I do that, I do that. Eventually people are going to say, okay, prove it. What do you do? What do you do with it? Eventually I can say, I took the podcast and have an office. A lot of the guys here are using the platform to better themselves. A lot of the guys are receiving dollars from a podcast, which was unheard of. People 5 years ago would tweet out and say, you can't even make minimum wage, when it's proven that if you try your ass off, you can. And we've earned media credentials. We have people that message us that want to be on the podcast. Vito is now doing sit downs with big names, and look for those upcoming in the near future and in 2019. I got Vito some advanced gear. He's going to now do podcasts at people's homes, and he's going to be able to do a feature sit down interview with some big names, and look for those. You don't get big names, you don't have success or get credentials if you're not doing something. So eventually people want to know, okay, show us what you're doing. And eventually we do show people what we're doing. And eventually the fans, the hardcore fans of Michigan, the insiders, those like Greg Henson, those like Steve Dace, the staff members at WTK in Ann Arbor, eventually they're going to say, put something in the fucking, championship case. There's nothing there. And nobody likes that because in the end, it comes off as disingenuous and a bunch of bullshit. In this day and age, people will buy it, but only for so long. You can't do that 4 or 5 years. We're the leaders and best. Because the first thing you think about, the first thing I said when I saw that tweet, I just started laughing. And I said, is there a way I can kind of get in there and make a funny statement? I just couldn't. I just waited for the comments. And the comments spoke for themselves. They're like, dude, we got punked. We got bitch slapped by Ohio State. This shit's ridiculous. Stop it.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's what it is.
That's what it is.
Tim Coleman, who apparently is a pastor, replied to Daxton Hill, and you can follow Daxton Hill on Twitter at DaxHill5. Welcome to the mediocrity in Ann Arbor. Low character guys deserve Harbaugh. Matt Dudek, who is a coach for Michigan, responded back to him.
Oh, nice.
Which is great. Peace be with you, Pastor.
Exactly. I love it. We got to do more of that. The stuff that we can read in these Twitter posts, some of them are me, of course,
great.
but it is great. We got to do that. We got to look at some subtweets because that's a funny ass shit, dude. I actually, some of the times when I got an hour free, I'll just sit back and go through some comments that people write to people. And it's funny about the debates back and forth. And even some good news, people are like, who cares? You know, it's kind of funny the comments that people get and things like that. But that's the case. It's show me time for Michigan, and that's all. That's it.
You got to start going out there and start actually winning stuff.
Yeah. Real quickly, what do you make of the reports, and Greg Henson wrote about it, that Jim Harbaugh is maybe upset regarding the fact that some players, even captains, are just skipping the bowl outright and are not going to play in the Peach Bowl? For me personally, it's real simple. It's a business decision. When it comes to dollars, Jake Butt, a former Michigan player, is the head example of why playing in a bowl game right now is really meaningless. And if a guy does it in the season, a la Bosa at Ohio State, I'm not really fond of that because you agree to play. But a bowl game, in the end, it's kind of meaningless. So I'm kind of in disagreement with Harbaugh being pissed. I know it's an agreement that you play the whole year, but I'm not mad at Gary. I mean, he's out there planning his future, starting sports firms and looking for his future. He ain't thinking about a meaningless trip to Florida or a meaningless New Year's Six Bowl that doesn't have championship ramifications. That's where we're at, where more players are going to do it, more power to them. That's one way they can enact some power in a meaningless, powerless situation for a lot of players. Skip the bowl game, get to training, get your ass some money.
I see it both ways. If I'm a player, exactly what you just said, right? Jake Butt's the prime example. This is a guy who played in a bowl game, ended up tearing his ACL, and has set his NFL career back. You know, it hindered where he was going to be drafted. He was a guy who was supposed to be drafted, I believe it was in the top half of the NFL draft. He ended up falling into, I think it was the second round, maybe third round, if I remember correctly. So I get it from a player's perspective. From a coaching perspective, I understand it too, because you've built your season around what these guys can do. Now you get to this point where you're going to a bowl game, and yeah, I get it, it's not the playoff, but the bowl game is still important to the coaching staff. It's still important to the school and what winning a bowl game means, because it means dollars, guys. It means money. You win a bowl game, you get a lot more money than if you lose the bowl game. And this is supposedly a New Year's Six Bowl. I don't really care about the Peach Bowl. It's what it is. There is a lot of money to be earned and garnered, not just for Michigan, but for the Big Ten. So when you have a guy like Rashawn Gary, when you have a guy like Devin Bush, or you have other guys who decide that they're not going to play in these bowl games, it hurts your chances to win these games, and two, it hurts your drawing power, and it hurts your team, because throughout the whole season, you guys are buddies at arms. You know what I'm saying? You're just as good as the guy to your right or to your left. And now a guy like Rashawn Gary's like, this isn't going to really help me with anything, and there's a good chance I'm going to get hurt. So you guys, as he claps the backs of both guys to his right and to his left, you guys go ahead and do this. I'm going to sit this one out.
And it's good, too, because people look at it like a negative. You can see the younger cats play. Who's upcoming?
That's kind of how I look at it.
A guy that had an injury-plagued year, Black, can now be featured a little bit more and hopefully have a chance to see what he can do in a pressure situation against some quality opponents. So I think the bowl game can technically not be viewed as the end of the 2018 season, but basically the beginning, like a preseason game in the beginning of 2019. That's kind of how I view it, and I feel good about it. All right, before we talk about the NFL, the Doc has 3 great questions I'm going to lay on the Jock, and he's going to give great takes as always. I want to talk about how we started this project and how if you're looking to start a brand new project, you can reach the level of success that we did. We use a great host site, and what that means is if you're into the podcast game and you want to be able to record audio and have support, you have people that listen to it, get great interviews, maybe go out there and cover sports, or maybe use the platform to get your name out there to move things along and better yourself, definitely check out a great host site. And the one that we use is Podomatic. We've recorded over 1,100 podcasts on this platform, and we've only used one host site. So if you're looking to start a brand new project, you want a podcast, you want to get into this game, definitely find a great podcast platform so that when you upload the audio, it can go out to all the podcast platforms. And Podomatic is super easy, super user-friendly, and it allows us to record audio, have fun, make fun of each other, upload the audio, and then all of you can hear it across the various platforms that you like podcasts. So definitely go check out Podomatic.com. All right, cuz we got to end the podcast
I like
with
this.
Yeah. Of course, I told you in a couple weeks back, I said, look, we've been talking a lot of Lions, and that just ends up in like depressing feeling. Doesn't feel good to talk about them all that much. Let's mix in some NFL. Let's talk about some real football. So, to start it off, 3 great quarterbacks that are lighting it up offensively. Who do you think should win the MVP? Mahomes, Rivers, or Drew Brees?
Let's start with Drew Brees first. Drew Brees has been having a really incredible year. I think the New Orleans Saints are a team that seems destined to make it to the Super Bowl. All that being said, he's had a couple clunkers in there. He's had a few games where he just hasn't looked as sharp, and the team hasn't looked as sharp. So I'm going to have to take Drew Brees out of the mix. Look at Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has been breaking records. He's been killing it out there. Absolutely insane. Now, some of Patrick Mahomes' production has fallen off in recent weeks. You know, Kareem Hunt goes away. You lose a very formidable piece. You lose a security blanket, if you will, especially when nothing's open downfield or the box is collapsing around you. You don't have that safety net where you can just kind of toss the ball out, and next thing you know, you've got an elite running back running down the field, picking up 30, 40 yards and falling into the end zone. So Patrick Mahomes has been doing some incredible things. This guy's a human highlight reel. A couple days ago, we were talking about a no-look pass from this guy. We were talking about him running to his right and then throwing 30 yards across his body, 50 yards downfield. That's insane. You don't see stuff like that. The guy is amazing right now. You look at Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is probably having his best season in his career. Phillip Rivers is playing incredible football, doing a really good job of not turning the ball over a trillion times like, I don't know, him and Matt Stafford are normally doing every single season. He's making the right decisions. He has this San Diego Chargers team in a spot where they look like a legit Super Bowl contender, a team that will probably win the Super Bowl, guys. It's insane. When was the last time you could say the LA Chargers / San Diego Chargers were that team? It's been forever. It's been forever. For me right now, it comes down to Mahomes and Rivers. I'm going to nod towards Rivers, and it's just because I think he has a little bit less talent around him. I think Tyreek Hill is a better wide receiver than a guy like Keenan Allen. I think Kareem Hunt, when he was playing, was a better running back than Melvin Gordon. You take both those guys out, now they're dealing with ancillary pieces, and I'm not sure if what Mahomes is dealing with is better than what Rivers is dealing with, but I think overall the talent on Kansas City is that much better than what Phillip Rivers has to work with, and I think what Phillip Rivers is doing is exceptional right now.
What's your take on Darius Slay being the only Lions player named to the Pro Bowl? I know you took offense maybe that Snacks could have been included. He even tweeted out and said, what's a guy got to do to get on the Pro Bowl? But look, Snacks, it's a real easy thing to talk about and answer. The reason why a lot of fans don't respect the Lions is they're not a playoff team. So how can you be popular if you're playing bad football and your team collectively doesn't really do a whole heck of a lot to garner support from the fans? Darius Slay, a guy that is productive and is a guy that's been to the Pro Bowl, so people know who he is nationally and things like that. It's just that, remember, Pro Bowl voting is a popularity contest, and right now the stock is way down on the Lions. What's your take?
I was surprised it was Darius Slay.
Yeah.
I had already mentioned he's having one of his worst seasons in his career. He's not been very good this year. A guy like Snacks, I felt like should have got the nod. Snacks had a great season in New York, gets traded to Detroit, and makes an immediate impact. Like, you can't stress how much of an impact Snacks has had on this Detroit Lions defense. For him to be overlooked and to be passed up just blows my mind. Blows my mind. Like, not even listed as an alternate, I don't believe. Quandre Diggs is the alternate. Like, what are we talking about here? Quandre Diggs, Diggs has played well. He's been good, but not Snacks Harrison good. Snacks Harrison made a dramatic difference to this defense since day one. How do you leave a guy like that out? It blew my mind. I was actually kind of frustrated by it. I just didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. I don't believe Darius Slay deserves to be there. And I think that's probably my biggest issue with it is this is a guy who doesn't deserve to go. I love Darius Slay. I think he's so much fun to listen to. I love interviewing him.
Right.
He's awesome because he is the Cardi B of the NFL. Like, you talk to this guy, look, say what you want about Cardi B. I find her to be very, very entertaining. She makes all kinds of noises when she talks. She just invents words as she goes along. Darius Slay does the same damn thing.
Exactly. Now, finally, to end the podcast, who are Jock's 5 teams that rank high in terms of the top teams in the NFL? Give us Jock's power rankings. Give me some good 5 teams that we should look at going forward the rest of the season.
So for me, number 1 is the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints are my number 1 team. The Saints are going to be followed by the Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. I think you can flip-flop and you can argue either way here for either one of these teams, but I think the Chargers are playing at such a high level, while the Kansas City Chiefs have kind of seemed to scuffle a little bit along the way. But I like the Chargers over the Chiefs right now as my number 2 team. Chiefs are number 3. After that, it's going to be the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears are lighting it up. They're playing great football right now. And then after the Bears, my 5th team. This is a team that is starting to fade a little bit. We talked about them a little bit last week, and I don't know if fade's a fair word for them. They're dealing with some injuries with Todd Gurley. The team hasn't looked really good on the road, but it's the LA Rams are my 5th team. I think they have a good head coach who has an incredible imagination when it comes to the offense. I really think for this team to be successful and to make a run at a team like the New Orleans Saints or the Chicago Bears or even the Los Angeles Chargers or the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they're going to have to get that defense right. Wade Phillips is going to have to figure out how to utilize the talent that he has and get the most out of it, whether it's taking Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald and pulling them out of the middle of that defense and having them line up as ends, or somehow generating different coverages and different looks to get to the quarterback. I know he doesn't have the normal pieces that he normally likes to have. He usually likes to have 2 defensive ends that can get to the quarterback and put pressure on him. He doesn't have that. That's why he has a guy like Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald rushing up the middle and generally putting themselves out of position. That's why you're allowed to run on them so well. So if you have a running back, hey guys, some fantasy advice here, right? It's championship week. Listen to the guy who's playing in 2 championships, all right? If you have a running back going up against the Los Angeles Rams, start them. Start them. I don't care if you got to start them in your flex. Start them. Because what the Rams do is they send Aaron Donald, that's why he has 16.5 sacks, and Ndamukong Suh, they send them at the quarterback all the time. What that does is it opens up huge holes in the middle of that defense because those guys are trying so hard to get to the quarterback because they don't have those edge rushers that Wade Phillips normally has. He hasn't figured out a way to get those guys to get to the quarterback. So he has his defensive tackles bum rushing the quarterback, leaves huge holes in the middle of that defense, and that's why you're able to exploit them for massive runs and why your running backs look so damn good against the Rams. They need to fix that defense.
Great podcast recording. Sir, you can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you want to leave a voicemail anytime, definitely check it out. 248-579-8686. I've enjoyed this recording. Pretty clean. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. Adam and I will definitely be here throughout the holidays. It works out perfectly for our recording schedules.
Well, this is our pre-Christmas show, isn't it? I didn't realize it. It's our pre-Christmas show. Merry Christmas, guys.
Tune in to Adam. He'll be doing some fill-in work later on this month on WDFN for Big Drew and Jim. Always check out the WDFN tailgate. Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. on WDFN. It's a great show. I enjoy the banter between Ryan and Adam. When Ryan lets Adam talk, it's a good show. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you so much for supporting the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Go Blue, bitch.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.